Don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments section, and subscribe to the channel to stay updated with our latest stories. Sophia once believed that love was a quiet kind of loyalty, the kind that showed up in the middle of the night, exhausted and aching, and still made dinner. A registered nurse who gave everything to her job and even more to her home, she had learned to smile through the fatigue, to swallow her needs when Ethan came home distracted, and to nod patiently when Jack, his adult son, barely acknowledged her presence. Their home, hers only in theory, was a place where she felt like a ghost, gliding silently through rooms where no one looked up. Ethan's affection had dulled over time, buried beneath his unwavering devotion to Jack and the daily grind of his auto shop. Jack, 19, had always been distant, but recently he had become almost hostile, cold smirks, muttered comments, and a growing sense that he was waiting for her to break. Sophia tried to explain the tension to Ethan, but he brushed it off. "He's just adjusting," he said. "Give him time." But time, Sophia realized, had only made things worse. The house she had helped turn into a home had become a place of silence, unease, and invisible wounds. And deep down, she knew something was coming, something she wouldn't be ready for. It had been the kind of day that stripped a person bare, 12 relentless hours at the hospital, codes blaring, patients crying, and death hovering far too close. Sophia's legs trembled from exhaustion as she dragged herself through the pouring rain toward her car, soaked to the skin, her only comfort the thought of collapsing into bed beside Ethan. But when her phone buzzed and she saw his name, the message inside hit her harder than the thunder above. "Roof's leaking again. Fix it. ASAP. No please, no how are you?" Just a command, as if she were a hired hand, not a partner. By the time she reached home, the storm was raging. Sophia didn't even hesitate. With aching arms and blistered palms, she climbed onto the slippery roof and patched the damage as best she could, each movement powered by sheer will and heartbreak. When she finally stumbled back inside, drenched, shaking, and numb, Ethan was in the kitchen, dry and scrolling his phone like nothing had happened. "Cool," was all he said when she told him it was fixed.
No gratitud.
No concern. Just indifference. Sophia stood there, dripping rainwater onto the kitchen tile, staring at a man she no longer recognized. The silence between them was louder than any storm. It wasn't just about the roof. It was about everything she had held up alone, this house, this family, this marriage. And now, she realized, she was the only one still trying to keep it from falling apart. Sophia awoke with the weight of her soaked clothes still clinging to her skin, a dull ache in every joint, and sunlight burning through the blinds like a cruel reminder that the world kept spinning, regardless of how broken she felt. But what truly jolted her awake wasn't the light, or the pain, it was the cold edge in Ethan's voice. He stood at the foot of the bed, arms crossed, jaw tight, with Jack, his son, leaning smugly against the doorframe. Something was wrong. Then she saw them, 3 black trash bags by the closet, her clothes spilling out like a scene from someone else's nightmare. "Get up. You're leaving," Ethan said, each word hitting like a hammer. Sophia blinked, trying to make sense of it. "Leaving? What are you talking about?"
Her voice cracked.
He didn't even flinch. "Check the fridge." Taped to the door was a note in bold, loopy handwriting, "You're dead weight. Get out."
I found a real man.
Her knees nearly gave out as Jack chuckled behind her. "I set them up," he added, pride dripping from his voice. "My boss at the auto shop. Mom's been seeing him for months." The room spun. Her world crumbled. She stared at Ethan, at the man she'd sacrificed everything for, waiting for denial, remorse, anything. But he only shrugged and tossed her keys. 5 minutes, or I'm calling the cops." It wasn't just betrayal. It was exile. And as the door slammed behind her, Sophia realized, this wasn't heartbreak. This was war. Sophia's fingers trembled as she tightened her grip on the steering wheel, her heartbeat louder than the hum of the engine. She had driven aimlessly for hours, numb and shaking, her life reduced to 3 trash bags stuffed in the back seat. A woman who had once built a home from nothing, sacrificed her time, money, and heart, was now cast out like she'd never mattered. It wasn't just the betrayal that haunted her, it was the fact that no one, not even Ethan, had fought for her. And Jack. Smug, condescending Jack. A boy she tried so hard to support, to understand, who had twisted the knife deeper by delivering the final blow. As dusk painted the horizon in blood-orange hues, Sophia parked by a quiet overlook, the silence suffocating. Her phone buzzed, Another missed call from her best friend, from her sister, but she couldn't bring herself to speak. What could she even say? That her husband left her for another woman orchestrated by his own son? That everything she sacrificed was used as a weapon against her? Her reflection in the mirror startled her. Gone was the composed nurse, the caretaker. In her place was a woman betrayed, discarded, and quietly unraveling. But beneath the grief, something stirred. Not rage, not vengeance, yet, but a flicker of resolve. This wasn't how her story would end. She hadn't weathered storms and exhaustion just to disappear under someone else's cruelty. If they thought they could erase her, they had underestimated her entirely. Sophia stood at the entrance of the cheap motel room she now called home, staring at the faded floral comforter and the hum of the flickering overhead light. The air smelled of disinfectant and something older, stale, worn-down hope. Days had passed since Ethan threw her out, but the pain hadn't dulled. If anything, the shock had calcified into something sharper. She kept replaying the moment Jack grinned as he watched her crumble, like it was all just a game to him. That look in his eyes, glee masked as detachment, haunted her more than Ethan's cold indifference. She had given that boy everything, her patience, her money, her silent sacrifices. And this was how he repaid her? By helping another woman replace her, cheering as his father betrayed her? Sophia had tried to rationalize it. Maybe Jack was hurting, maybe Ethan had poisoned his perception, but the truth was more bitter. They had never seen her as family. She was a placeholder, a stepping stone. But as she sat on the edge of the stiff bed, arms wrapped tightly around herself, a fire sparked inside her. If Ethan and Jack thought she'd just vanish, they were wrong. She wouldn't beg. She wouldn't plead. But she would rise, not to win them back, but to reclaim herself. The woman who once saved lives on the night shift could damn well save her own. And in that silent, flickering room, Sophia began plotting, not revenge but rebirth. A life forged not from their approval, but her own strength. The weeks that followed were a storm Sophia could barely navigate. The betrayal still stung, raw and ever-present, but it was the silence that haunted her most. Ethan hadn't reached out. Not once.
No επάλεγε, no explanation.
It was as though she had been erased from his life with the same ease as deleting a number from a phone. Meanwhile, Jack paraded around town with the smugness of a boy who had gotten everything he wanted. And Sophia? She returned to long, grueling shifts at the hospital, pouring her exhaustion into caring for strangers because it hurt too much to care for herself. Every night she came home to the tiny, soulless motel room and collapsed, her body tired but her mind relentless. The memories were merciless. The first time Ethan had kissed her forehead. The way Jack used to roll his eyes but eventually cracked a smile when she made pancakes shaped like dinosaurs. All of it had meant something to her. But now, those memories were daggers. One evening, while charting patient notes on a breakroom tablet, Sophia's phone buzzed. A message.
Unknown number.
The words were brief, but they lit a fire beneath her ribs. I know what they did. We should talk. Rachel. Sophia stared at the screen, heart thudding. Rachel, Ethan's ex. The woman he rarely spoke about, the one everyone had painted as the villain. And now she wanted to talk? Sophia didn't know whether to be afraid or curious. But one thing was certain, the truth wasn't done with her yet. Sophia sat across from Rachel at a quiet corner cafe, the kind of place where secrets felt safe to be spoken aloud. Rain tapped against the windows like an impatient whisper, echoing the storm building inside her. Rachel was nothing like she expected, no bitterness, no scorn. Just quiet resolve and eyes that had clearly seen more than they ever should have. I know how it feels, Rachel said, wrapping her hands around a steaming mug. To be discarded like a temporary fix, to be blamed for someone else's mess. Sophia wanted to scoff, to say she wasn't like Rachel. But the truth was harder to swallow, she was like her. Just another chapter in Ethan's long, spiraling story of manipulation. Rachel leaned forward, her voice low.
Victor, my old boss?
The one Ethan said I'd had an affair with? Sophia nodded, wary. He was Ethan's pawn, Rachel continued. He wasn't the one pursuing me. Ethan planted that story. Told my friends, our neighbors. He needed a reason to leave me without looking like the bad guy. Sophia's breath caught. So, he lied to everyone? Rachel nodded. And now he's doing the same thing to you. It felt like the final thread had been cut. Sophia's rage, long buried beneath exhaustion and heartbreak, ignited. The lies weren't just personal, they were deliberate, orchestrated. And if Ethan had done this to both of them, how many others had he burned along the way? Sophia didn't have the full picture yet, but she was done playing the fool. She and Rachel had one thing now: truth and vengeance. The confrontation Sophia had long rehearsed finally unfolded under the harsh glare of their dimly lit living room. Ethan stood by the fireplace, arms folded, his expression unreadable as she tossed a folder onto the coffee table. Inside, printouts of coal logs, credit card receipts, and damning photos of him with Clara, the woman he once swore was just an old friend. Sophia's voice trembled at first, but each word built with a fury that had been simmering for months. You lied. About everything. About Rachel. About Clara. About us. Ethan remained silent, the crackling fire behind him casting shadows over a face that had once meant safety, but now only summoned distrust. What did you think would happen? She snapped. That I'd never question why your stories never lined up? Why Jack suddenly hated me? Why Rachel looked at me like she knew something I didn't? He finally spoke, his tone cold and defensive. You're being dramatic. You always were. That was the last straw. Sophia's laugh was bitter, sharp. No, Ethan. I was loyal. I was blind. But not anymore. She turned to leave, pausing only when Ethan said, You'll regret this. Her gaze was steel. No. I regret staying this long. As the door slammed behind her, Sophia didn't feel broken, she felt reborn. For the first time in years, she wasn't running from the truth. She was walking straight through the wreckage with her head held high, ready to reclaim everything Ethan tried to steal: her voice, her dignity, her freedom. The days that followed Sophia's departure were eerily silent, like the calm that lingers after a devastating storm. But silence has a way of amplifying wounds. Ethan tried to pretend life was unchanged, that the shattered remnants of his marriage could be swept beneath the rug of routine. Jack, however, made that impossible. Once cold and distant with Sophia, he now brimmed with questions she'd left unanswered. Why did she leave, Dad? He asked one morning, eyes narrowed with suspicion. Ethan mumbled something about misunderstandings, but Jack wasn't a child anymore, he'd seen too much. He'd heard the late-night fights, caught glimpses of secret messages, and had long known the tension that pulsed through their home. Meanwhile, Sophia was rebuilding, not just her life, but her sense of self. In a small apartment across town, she surrounded herself with quiet things: books, candles, music that didn't remind her of Ethan. Still, the pain lingered. Betrayal doesn't vanish with distance. It morphs. It sharpens. And it fuels. Rachel's name, once just a shadow, was now front and center in Sophia's mind. The betrayal wasn't Ethan's alone. Rachel, the one who had laughed at her jokes, shared wine at her table, played pretend friend, she had been the poison in disguise. Sophia didn't want revenge. Not yet. What she wanted was truth. And with every passing day, the weight of that truth pressed heavier on Ethan's chest. Sophia wasn't done. She was just getting started. And the reckoning that was coming wouldn't be whispered, it would roar. Sophia stood outside the coffee shop, the early morning chill biting through her coat, nerves flaring like sparks in her chest. She hadn't seen Victor in over a year, not since the affair. Not since he'd unraveled her world with nothing more than a smirk and a whisper in her ear that made her stomach twist with equal parts desire and disgust. But she needed answers now. Pieces weren't fitting, and if Ethan and Rachel thought they'd buried the truth deep enough to keep her in the dark, they were wrong. Victor had no reason to lie anymore. Or so she hoped. He looked the same, charming, smug, confident. When he saw her, a flicker of surprise crossed his face before he smoothed it over with that signature grin. Didn't think I'd be seeing you again, he said, raising his coffee. Sophia didn't return the smile. Cut the act, she said, sliding into the seat across from him. I know about the house. The money. The phone records. His smirk faded. Victor leaned back, tapping his cup thoughtfully.
So isen krekt, who?
Sophia's heart raced. This wasn't just about infidelity anymore. This was deeper. Messier. You helped him cover it all up. The apartment. The fake business deals. Victor didn't deny it. Instead, he offered a chilling shrug.
I protect my investments.
That was the moment Sophia knew, the betrayal wasn't emotional, it was calculated. Strategic. And if she wanted justice, she'd have to outplay them both. This wasn't heartbreak. This was war. That evening, Sophia sat in the dimly lit living room, the shadows of the fireplace dancing across her face as Ethan finally walked through the front door. His expression was cautious, like a man stepping into a battlefield he helped create. She didn't rise to greet him. Instead, she held the folder in her lap, thick with bank statements, apartment leases, and printed messages that stitched together a tapestry of betrayal. "We need to talk," she said, her voice low but steady. Ethan hesitated, closing the door behind him with a quiet click. "Sophia, if this is about—" "It's about everything," she interrupted, standing slowly, her heart thundering but her eyes unflinching. "The lies, the money, the woman you swore was just a friend. And don't bother denying it, Victor told me everything." He paled at the name, his jaw tightening. "Victor's lying. You can't trust him." "And I'm supposed to trust you?" she snapped, the fury finally bubbling to the surface. "After the roof, the cold silence, after watching me climb onto a house in a storm while you sat warm and dry, texting her?" Ethan looked away, shame coloring his face for the first time. "I didn't know how to fix us," he whispered. Sophia's breath hitched, but she didn't break. "Not now. You didn't try." She dropped the folder onto the coffee table. "That's everything I know. And now you have a choice, fight for this marriage, or walk away like you already have."
Sie Längse fell heavy.
The next move was his. The morning after their explosive confrontation, Sophia found herself sitting alone at the kitchen table, staring at a coffee cup she hadn't touched. Ethan had left without a word, no apology, no promise, just silence. Her hands trembled as she opened her laptop, each keystroke echoing like a decision. She had been blindsided once, it wouldn't happen again. The time for tears was over, she needed to protect what little she had left. As she began scanning through emails, bank accounts, and shared documents, the pieces of Ethan's betrayal came into sharper focus. Transactions she hadn't noticed before. Withdrawals. A lease in a name she didn't recognize. And a string of emails forwarded from a name that made her blood run cold, Victor. Victor had once been a confidant, a colleague turned friend with a silver tongue and a smile too practiced. Now she saw the truth, he hadn't just warned her out of loyalty. He had played both sides. His involvement wasn't just personal, it was strategic. Sophia's chest tightened with dread. This was bigger than an affair. She picked up her phone and called her lawyer. "I need to talk," she said calmly. "It's urgent." Her voice didn't shake this time. Rage, grief, and heartbreak had crystallized into clarity.
Sophia wassen ze broken wo man standing in se rein an humore.
She was someone else now, someone sharper, more dangerous. She had given Ethan the chance to make things right. He didn't take it. So now, she would take everything back, on her own terms. The day Sophia stood before the mirror, dressed not in sorrow but resolve, was the day everything changed. The past few weeks had tested her beyond anything she imagined, betrayal, deceit, heartbreak, but they had also forged a new version of her, one unafraid to fight for herself. The woman who once tiptoed through her marriage, trying not to disturb the balance, was gone. In her place stood someone who had faced the fire and walked out scorched but standing. When Ethan tried to reach out again, showing up at her door with tired eyes and trembling hands, she listened, not because she needed his words, but because she deserved the closure. "I made mistakes," he said. Sophia nodded. "Yes, you did. But I made one too, believing you were worth all the parts of me I gave." She didn't raise her voice. She didn't cry. Instead, she handed him a sealed envelope, the final legal documents, neatly signed. She had chosen peace over pieces. Later that evening, Sophia met with her realtor to finalize the sale of the house. A new apartment waited on the other side of the city, smaller but filled with light, art, and possibilities. She wasn't just surviving anymore, she was creating again, dreaming again. Her story had been rewritten, not by Ethan or Jack or Victor, but by her own hands. And as she stepped into that new space, Sophia whispered the words she had once thought impossible, "I'm free." Sophia's story is a powerful reminder that self-worth should never be sacrificed for the sake of keeping a broken relationship intact. In today's world, where loyalty is often tested and emotional manipulation can go unnoticed, it's crucial to listen to your instincts and recognize your value. If you're giving everything and receiving silence, it's time to step back and ask if love still lives there, or if you're clinging to a memory. Healing begins when you choose yourself, even if that means walking away. You deserve honesty, respect, and a life that nourishes your spirit, not one that quietly breaks it.